For some, broadcasting doesn't mean much, but for Tom Maroniak, it meant everything. It was his last-ditch effort to land a career in broadcasting. There are many individuals who do the bare minimum to get the job done. Join me as I take a look back on how Tom Maroniak got to where he is today. IMS presents Determination, Passion, Unrelenting Work Ethic, a journey into broadcasting. Tell me about yourself.
My name's Thomas Maroniak. I am a little bit over 40 years old. I currently am the production supervisor for Trinity Broadcasting Network in Chicago. We're located in Aurora, and I've been with them coming on 3 years now.
Tell me about your childhood.
My childhood was a little bit rough. My parents paid a little bit more attention to my brother than they did to me. It wasn't horrible, you know, we went out and did the camping thing and all of that, but they really did pay attention to him more than me.
And who raised you?
Mainly my mom. My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old, and initially I had moved in with my mom. But shortly after that, it became a little bit overwhelming for my mom as a single parent to continue to take care of her two kids by herself. So I actually moved back in with my dad as he got remarried.
What high schools did you go to?
I went to Rolling Meadows High School, also Rolling Meadows Junior High, and an elementary school in Rolling Meadows as well. Literally most of my education was spent in the Rolling Meadows area.
What did you do after high school?
Immediately after I graduated high school, like within 3 weeks, I was in basic training. I had actually even signed up while I was a junior to go into the military right after I graduated. I just knew that I needed some form of discipline and structure in my life because I felt myself spinning out of control, and it seemed like a natural response for me. My dad was in the military, so it was something that I felt I really needed to do to put myself on a better track than where I was headed.
What position did you serve in the military?
In the military, I was a light wheel vehicle mechanic. I worked on quarter-ton, 2.5-ton, 5-ton trucks, and Humvees. I did a little bit of heavier equipment mechanic work, but not as much. But mainly in the motor pool for a total of 7 years between 1993 and 2000. One tour overseas in Germany during some of the conflicts that were going on in Iraq early on in that conflict back then. So I was a mechanic.
What did you learn from the military?
What I gained out of the military was mostly discipline and structure, brotherhood, how to take care of one another, look out for each other, and not to put yourself first. But what I took out of it the most was my work ethic. Right now I'm unstoppable because in the military, at least in the Army I should say, we had a motto that was be all you can be, and I really took that to heart. And I put that into effect literally with everything that I do. I put 120% in all day, every day, and that's because of my time in the military.
Do you have a family?
I do have a family. It's not necessarily a whole family unit at this point. I have a 21-year-old daughter who currently lives in Arizona. She's in the process of deciding if she wants to go into school to become a nurse. She just recently dropped out of a course where she wanted to be a pharmacist, but she realized that it wasn't exactly what she thought it would be. So she's kind of changing her career path there. Support her 100%. I was actually divorced when I was about 22 years old. My daughter was 3, so I do have a family, but it is not a whole unit anymore.
When your daughter was born, what job did you have back then?
When my daughter was born, I was working overnights at a gas station. I actually held a couple of different jobs just to kind of make ends meet, and I would take pretty much any job that would come my way just to make ends meet. But my main source of income at that point was working overnight at a gas station in Mount Prospect, and then I would watch my daughter during the day while my wife was at work.
What made you change your career?
The thing that made me change my career was everything that I was doing seemed like it was just a dead end, and I really didn't have any passion for anything that I did. I didn't wake up and say, oh I just can't wait to go to work. Nothing really ever caught my attention like that. But I tried to get my hands into everything that I possibly could just to see what I was going to be passionate about. I drove limousines, I've been a chef, I've driven a Zamboni. Literally the amount of jobs that I've done to me is baffling, but I did it with intent. I wanted to know what I was good at and what I was passionate about. I mean, I even did construction on houses, and it was, for me, it was really a matter of, number one, getting as much life experience as possible and just trying to be good at anything that I put my hands on. So I literally touched just about every kind of career I could.
How bad did you want to get into broadcasting?
When I realized that broadcasting was going to be my career path, for me it was a last-ditch effort to really bring my life together and to find my purpose in life. So I didn't just want it a little bit, I had to have it. It was my last-ditch effort. For me, literally, it was for success. I don't think I would have felt successful if I didn't actually achieve my goal of getting into broadcasting. I had to have it.
Why did you choose the Illinois Center for Broadcasting?
The Illinois Center for Broadcasting for me was really a no-brainer. It was an all-encompassing kind of curriculum where it was hands-on from day one, and you were learning everything about the industry: white balancing cameras, composition, video editing. They actually did some things in radio. I had a radio show while I was there. I just really enjoyed the fact that it was hands-on and it covered everything. I mean, they even did schooling on like how to build websites, and I just really enjoyed that it covered everything. I didn't consider many other schools, but I did look into the Columbia program as well and wasn't as impressed with it. It was quite a bit more expensive, and it didn't seem like it was as all-inclusive. So for me, it was a no-brainer to go to ICB, just because of how quickly the degree could have been achieved. And with the career assistance that they had, it seemed like it would be a pretty easy turnaround to go from an education into a career.
What did you learn at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting?
What didn't I learn at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting? I thought, you know, it's an all-encompassing school. They're going to cover everything, how to edit, and edit not only video but audio as well. I learned more than I could have hoped for. When it really came down to it, I left with a great comprehension of what broadcasting really consisted of, and I felt very confident in myself that once given the opportunity, I would be able to go into any position and just be able to deliver the kind of results that an employer would want.
Where did you intern during your time at ICB?
While I was in school at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, I interned at as many different places as I possibly could. I was a ringside camera operator for Blitz Pro Wrestling for quite a while. Actually, I stayed there for over a year. Well after I had graduated, I was still a ringside camera operator for them. I interned at the Sears Center in Hoffman Estates. I was a camera operator for the United States Gymnastics team with an event that they covered there. I was a ring announcer for the Chicago Golden Gloves in Cicero, which was probably one of my favorite internships. Incredible opportunity to be in the ring with the mic in front of a crowd. I did a radio show of my own as well for about a year, which is what I had originally planned on getting into when I actually started the curriculum. My goal was to be in radio. Didn't turn out that way, but I'm glad it did swing in that direction instead.
What was your favorite project in school?
My favorite project at ICB would have to be one of the music videos that I actually started to produce before I even started the curriculum. It was a 9/11 tribute video that I put to a Keith Urban song. It meant a lot to me with my time of service in the military. Just sifting through the images and putting together that story, including all of what went on 9/11, 2001. Very impactful project for me, and I hold that near and dear to my heart today. It was actually one of the first pieces of work of mine that actually aired on national television, so that would be my favorite.
When did you graduate from the Illinois Center for Broadcasting?
I graduated ICB in 2014. I graduated with over 665 internship hours. It was an amazing thing to me because at graduation I received 3 awards, which really was humbling. But I was awarded perfect attendance. I also was awarded the outstanding broadcast student, and I had the most internship hours out of my class as well. So a very humbling experience.
How did you feel when you graduated?
It was surreal. It wasn't quite the highlight like I experienced when I graduated basic training, but it was a highlight nonetheless. It was a very large goal that I had set for myself. I knew that I would accomplish it, and I did it in, the usual Tom fashion where it's just above and beyond. It's just how I am after I graduated the military boot camp program. And top of the world. I was just on top of the world. I was ready for anything.
What was your first job in the industry?
My first job in broadcasting actually happened shortly after I graduated. I received an email from the career services director at that point asking for a freelance camera operator to help Trinity Broadcasting Network out down in Ottawa, Illinois. That location is about an hour and 15 minutes away from my house. It's a long commute, especially in inclement weather, but I didn't even flinch. I immediately replied that I was interested in it and started to work as a freelance camera operator for TBN right after I graduated.
What is your position today at TBN?
At TBN today, by title, I'm the production supervisor, but it's not the only discipline that I actually perform on a daily basis. I'm a director, I'm a technical director, I'm a lighting technician, I'm a chief editor. I have 3 staff members underneath me. I play the role of an engineer when we don't have one on staff, and when we do have an engineer, I'm his assistant. I've even been a firefighter. There was an occasion when we had an engineer on staff. We were actually on top of the roof working on an antenna, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw smoke rising up the side of the building. And, well, that shouldn't be there. So, again, at Tom fashion, I'm going towards the fire, and I just kind of went over the edge of the building and saw one of the other tenants with a garden hose over the size of a dumpster trying to put out a fire. So I climbed on off the roof and actually got into the dumpster and sifted through it and put out a fire. So if there's something that comes up at TBN, up to and including like a forklift operator, personnel lift operator, I pretty much do anything that they ask for me to do.
Well, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Who is your mentor?
Throughout my time at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, and even to today, my mentor is without question Scott Granke, one of the most talented instructors that I had the pleasure to work with throughout my education at ICB. He's just so willing to help and knowledgeable about everything that there is to do in broadcasting, whether it be directing or operating a camera or working on a TriCaster. He was always there to answer the question, and if he didn't know the answer, which was almost never, he was always willing to get the answer or find it. Just an incredible individual. He brings a lot to the table, and he always carried an extendable finger with him, and I will never forget it, and it's like it's a pleasure to have been taught by him. One thing that I thought was incredibly cool was shortly after I started working at TBN, I had the opportunity to hire Scott Granke as a freelance camera operator for me, and he wound up to being my employee. So talk about a very cool, full circle, humbling experience. It was the day that I actually got to work side by side with Scott Granke in the industry, knowing wholeheartedly that I wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him. It was just such a very cool experience. Without a doubt, I owe my career to Scott Granke.
How did you find Christ?
I found Christ, again, in my life right after my divorce. My entire world fell apart when that happened. I needed Christ in my life again, otherwise I knew that I would tailspin out of control. So shortly after the divorce and DUIs and a whole bunch of other things that really brought me way down, I was literally on my hands and knees crying and looking up at the airplane that my grandfather has in my bedroom, and just remembering everything that he went through and all that. And anyway, that was it. I gave my life back to Christ after my divorce.
What was the best and worst moment of your life?
The best moment of my life, outside of the day my daughter was born, would have to be the day I graduated basic training. I knew at that moment that my life was taking a turn for the better, because all throughout my high school career, I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing, drugs, and just, going down that path that would have led to just absolute self-destruction. And because it was my own decision to get into the military, and I accomplished that goal, and I knew what the result would be before I even went in. When I graduated, that moment, really, it was the pinnacle. I knew things were changing right then and there. It's probably the highlight. As far as the worst, it would definitely be the divorce.
Okay.
I mean, when my parents were divorced, I was 3 years old. When I got a divorce, my daughter was 3 years old. So again, it was just a full circle. And when I was growing up, I had gave myself a pact that I would never allow myself to go through a divorce. So when it happened, my wife actually cheated on me at the time, and I caught her red-handed with a next-door neighbor, and it happened in my own house. It pretty much ruined me as a person and trusting people. It took a lot out of me. And I don't know, at that point, I didn't know if I would ever recover from it. But when I gave my life back to Christ, I knew it instantaneously that things would get better.
How do you feel about being an instructor at IMS?
Being an instructor at IMS to me is just another one of those surreal things. I was actually invited to be an instructor there at a point in my life where I just needed a little bit more income, and I didn't know how I was going to make that happen. So as I was working full-time for TBN, we actually went out to a job fair to see if we could gain some freelance contacts. And while I was at that job fair, I was approached by the director of the campus in Lombard, and I was asked if I wanted to teach. And absolutely, I said yes, which is very incredible to me, because throughout my education at the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, which is literally the same school, they've just changed their name since, but I used to say, how cool would it be if I had the opportunity to come back and teach in broadcasting? And what do you know, I am. It's incredible to be able to give back and share my experience and knowledge with students the way Scott had done to me. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it.
What would you tell your students to help them succeed today?
I would tell my students, don't ever give up. You're going to go through hard times. There's going to be things that you fail at. Get back up and don't ever stop trying. It's difficult going through school and working and getting the internship hours. It's hard. But once that education stops and you're in the industry, it doesn't get any easier. So have the work ethic. Put in the time, put in the effort. Don't ever give up. Put in your best all day, every day, because you need to hang on to that job. In this industry, there's people on your heels looking to snag your job out from underneath you on a constant basis. It's very hard to get into the industry, and for me to have gotten in here at TBN as quickly as I did is nothing short of a miracle. While I was in school, I was praying to God that if I got into the industry, I had to have done something positive with my life and with my career. Because there's just so much negativity in the news, and I don't really like all of the commercialism that's in mainstream television. It's not exactly where I would go with my career. So to be at Trinity Broadcasting Network, the world's largest Christian television station, putting out nothing but solid, positive content 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without anything more than promoting someone's book as a commercial, or just promotions to help people. it doesn't get any better than that. So if I can do it, coming through what I've been through, anybody can do it. And that's one thing I really want to instill in every student that I come across, is it is possible to achieve a goal. What you think about, you bring about. Your focus determines your reality. And anything is possible if you put your mind to it.
What motivates you?
My daughter motivates me more than anything. She means the world to me. I never had the opportunity to really be there as a father the way I wanted to when I initially got married and we had a child because of the divorce. And I want to be an inspiration to her. I went back to school when I was nearing 40 years old. And that meant a lot to her. It actually helped her, at least I hope it did. It helped her in her education. And I hope it still does, to see her father go through school at such a late age and actually achieve a goal that he set for himself. I just hope it's an inspiration for her. I miss her.
What are some of the things that have changed since you graduated?
Since I graduated ICB, everything has changed. From the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I want to be at work. Prior to graduating the ICB curriculum, I had no desire to actually go to work every day. And now I don't want to leave the station. I'm just so passionate about my career and what I do. That would be the biggest change in my life that's happened since. Is I've just never been so happy about where I am in life. I feel like I made it.
Did you ever think you'd begin your own interview?
If you told me 5 years ago that I would be sitting down here with IMS Productions being interviewed about my career in broadcasting, I would have straight up laughed in your face, because I would have never even crossed my mind that I would have even attempted to get into broadcasting. Just because I knew even back then, before I started to get into the industry, how hard it is to break in. So for me to have been invited to be on an interview, it's surreal. It's awesome.
What are your future plans?
In the future, I'd like to accomplish quite a bit more. I'd like to continue learning more about animation, 3D animation, possibly write, produce, and film, direct, and edit a short film. I want to see my drone business take off a little bit more, excuse the pun, but I would like to see that actually take off a little bit more.
What are some of your accomplishments?
Some of the things I've accomplished since I've been in broadcasting, I would have to say one of the first projects that I did here at TBN was just a quick promo for an event that was going on in the Philippines. And after it aired, numbers came back to me quite a while later that it had actually impacted tens of millions of people's lives. Once I heard that, the scope of what I was doing and its impact on the world really hit home. So I think everything that I do right now at TBN is a major accomplishment, just because of the amount of people's lives that I'm positively impacting. I do national programming, I've done international programming for Russia. It's an everyday thing, I think, to impact people positively. That's a major accomplishment. And I do it every day. It's phenomenal.
What companies have you done drone work for?
Quite a few, actually. I've done some work for Great America up in Gurnee here in Illinois. I've done work for several car dealerships around the area. One of the coolest projects I actually got to do was with Ben Hollis, the host of Wild Chicago that used to be on Channel 11. He wanted to film a music video, and I don't know how, other than the grace of God, I even got involved in it, but that was one of the coolest jobs I ever got to do, just because I remember flipping through Channel 11 and seeing Ben Hollis here, and then all of a sudden I'm on a rooftop with Ben Hollis filming a music video. Very cool. I've done some work downtown Chicago at a festival that's held annually called African Fest. I've done concerts down in Hammond, Indiana. I was actually there at a Chief Keef concert way back just a couple years ago, or a few years ago, when he showed up in the form of a hologram. I was there for that. Quite a few things. I'd like to do more of it, travel in the process.
What are you most talented in?
As far as what I'm most talented in, I really don't have like one thing that I'm specifically like, that is my talent. I sincerely enjoy directing television. I think it's one of my strengths, but I'm also a very talented editor. I'm pretty creative when it comes to that. But I think, again, just because of my time in the military, I put in 120 or more % worth of effort in everything that I do. I just try to be all I can be at everything that I do. So I try to do well at everything. I don't limit myself.
What are your hidden talents?
My hidden talent is I'm a drummer. I've actually been playing since I was 10 years old. I don't do it often, but it actually helped me get through a lot of tough times. Even when I was dead tired going through school at ICB, just working constantly. There was one week where I was actually awake for over 72 hours between internships, school, and work. I would always find time to sit down behind the drums, and I would literally find myself sitting at the drum set with my eyes closed playing Speak Life by Toby Mac. And it was just one of those things that was a positive influence in a very rough time in my life. So I've been drumming for a while. I love it. I did it in a band for a little while, but it just wasn't my thing. So, I mean, even though I was, just in my living room playing that song while I was in school, I actually wound up doing a music video to Speak Life while I was in school, which is a really great project. It did take, I think it was over 70 hours to actually edit, and it was a difficult edit, and Scott Granke thought it was an extremely ambitious project, and he was kind of taken back that I had such a major project in mind, and when he saw the finished product, he was really happy with it. It was a really cool project to get the chance to work on. Helped me through a lot.
Did you ever think about changing your career to music?
Absolutely, I did not. I mean, I love playing music. I've actually played several different instruments like the saxophone and whatnot, but it wasn't the thing for me. I grew up around a lot of alcohol, and that seems to be prevalent in the music industry, and it was just not something that I wanted to be around. So, no, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
How did you learn to edit video?
I started editing at ICB with Final Cut Pro, learning most of it through Scott Granke with Final Cut, and by the time I had graduated, I knew that Adobe Creative Cloud would be kind of like more of an industry standard and more prevalent in the broadcasting industry than I had originally anticipated. So I actually started teaching myself Adobe Premiere just by watching YouTube and getting into it and just playing with it. Because one thing about an editing system is you can just not break it. If you open a new project, it's literally a refreshed project. So I literally just got in there and started learning everything I could about Premiere and After Effects and Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. I'm self-taught with a lot of the Adobe suite, as well as some animation as well.
Thank you, Tom Roniak, for giving me a chance to give you this interview.
It's my pleasure. You're welcome.
Thank you.